The Chunin exams, a miniature war between the allied lands of shinobi that allow a young ninja to fight to the death if need be, while simultaneously weeding out any ninja unfit to be in the rank of a Chunin. The Chunin exams is one of the most beloved arcs in Naruto and is generally said to be the best alongside arcs like the Pain arc or the fated battle between two brothers. And even people who seem to hate Naruto give this arc the high praise it deserves through just being cool and interesting. This arc is where we're introduced to Rock Lee, a fan favorite who debuts the 8 gates techniques and gives us one of the most memorable fights in the series when he faces off against Gaara, the boy who completed every mission assigned to him unscathed and set the record for the fastest completion of the Chunin exams ever by getting through the entire force of death in just 97 minutes, completely shattering the previous record, which was held by a young Itachi who actually completed the exams alone in around 4.5 hours. Lee is supposed to be the counter to talent being better than hard work by showing up and just beating everybody. He beats up Sasuke before giving him a speech about why even though he's from an elite clan, he's still inferior in the presence of someone who trains harder and even excites and motivates Sasuke in a way to get even stronger. Alongside all of these interesting characters, there's also some fairly interesting power scaling in the Chunin exams of Naruto, and people often have debates about who's the strongest getting during the exams, and that's exactly what I'm going to be going over here today. Everyone who has already achieved the rank of a Chunin or higher will be excluded from this video. Only the Genin will be ranked, and I'm also only going to be ranking people based on what they can actually do in a normal fight, like what they can pull out with their own power, so no super mental amp versions of characters will be used here, just their own ability unless it's in character for them to get said mental amp. Similar to what I did in my last video, I'm going to be going over more than just edgy power scaling and try to explain the narrative and create a consistent basis as to why these characters are as strong as they are. I'll stop rambling now and we can get things started off with number 4 and 5. The 4th and 5th strongest fighters of the Chunin exams are the genius of the Hyuga clan Neji Hyuga and the main character himself Naruto. I'll mention before I get into either of these two characters that I'm saying they're number 4 and 5 because they're sort of interchangeable depending on how you interpret a few statements and the fight they have. I'm also talking about the Naruto who actually fought Neji, because if we talk about the one who fought Gaara, he would actually be a lot higher on this list, and I'll mention where he should be once I get there. Now, the good and simple thing about Naruto and Neji on this list is that they have a direct fight with each other, so it makes my job a lot easier. When the fight first starts, we see Neji completely outclassing Naruto. Nothing Naruto does works at all. Naruto uses shadow clones, they all get countered, and he tries to sneak attack Neji, gets hit with rotation, a form of absolute defense 10-10 considers to be even greater than Gaara's, which I disagree with, but I'll get into that when I get to the Gaara section of the video. Spoilers. Then Neji whips out what is said to be his true show of strength in the 8 trigrams 64 palms, and in one of the coolest debuts of a technique in the entire series in my opinion. He hits all of Naruto's chakra points, or at least 64 of them, and he forces him to the ground. A display that prompts Hinata's father Hiyashi Hyuga to say Neji is a member of the cadet branch that has completely surpassed the main branch, and the divine blood of the Hyuga clan actually resides within him. Neji declares that Naruto cannot stand anymore because his chakra points have been pressed, and then Naruto obviously gets up anyway. Neji constantly talks down to Naruto and says he only sees him as a failure because he has no idea what Naruto has that actually makes him special. Jiraiya even goes as far as to say that for Naruto to ignore using Kurama's chakra would be like ignoring a gift from above, and when he takes Naruto to the cliff to push him off so he can master the summoning jutsu, he says another reason he's doing it is to see if Naruto having the 9 tails is a blessing or a curse, and Naruto ends up mastering the summoning jutsu using Kurama's chakra, showing that it actually is a blessing. He possesses Kurama and he uses this blessing to overpower the damage Neji had done to him, and it's worth noting Naruto could have actually summoned Gamabunta here and just destroyed Neji and everyone else in the Chunin exam, since he says that the 9 tails chakra here is stronger than it was when he was training, and he summoned Gamabunta when he was training, but obviously that would have killed everyone. So yeah, at this point Naruto and Neji are almost completely equal to one another, and they have one final clash where Naruto actually says something very important to Neji. I may not understand the tragic destiny of the Hyuga clan, but if you feel it's unescapable, fine, then stop fighting it already. This is Naruto telling Neji that he himself is fighting against his own destiny, and after the clash, Naruto frees Neji from his worldview by winning the fight after catching Neji off guard with an uppercut, symbolized by the bird we see flying at the end of the chapter, and Neji himself is called the cage bird. Think of the cage as destiny and Neji as the bird, and he's now been freed from it. In Data Book 1, they do state when Naruto actually uppercut Neji, it was was the moment he surpassed him. That, along with the fact that Naruto literally like won the fight, I'm gonna say grants him the number 4 spot and places Neji in the 5th spot. However, I'd like to mention that these two are interchangeable. Like I said before, you could imply that if Naruto would have just gotten up off the ground instead of off guarding Neji, he would have lost here. So there's a way for both of them to win, but Naruto ultimately took the W. So in the number 3 spot, we have Rock Lee. I personally don't think Rock Lee is all that cool, but I do recognize him as a fan favorite among the community. And despite what Gaara, like I mentioned earlier, is definitely one of the most memorable fights in the franchise. Rock Lee has a fairly cool introduction. We first get a peek at how strong he might be when he intercepts Sasuke and another Guinea's attempted attack on one another and makes movements that Sakura questions are even possible to do. Then you have the obvious thing of him challenging Sasuke to a fight and absolutely ragdolling him, talking to him about how there are 2 kinds of strength, the kind you're born with and the kind you get through hard work, and he achieved all his power through hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. When they start talking about how Lee is able to master the 5 gates at his age, he must be a genius to do so, and his whole thing is he's sort of a genius of hard work. So he's got this amazing work ethic when everyone else doesn't really have one. But now that I got that out of the way, I can talk about some of the things Lee has actually done. So when rereading the Chunin exams for this video, I was pretty surprised by this feat when I first saw it. It doesn't really have anything to do with power scaling, but it was just like some weird shit Lee did. So when he's fighting Dosu, Lee reaches into the ground and he literally pulls like the root of a tree up in order to defend against an attack. Like the literal root of a tree in the fucking ground. He reaches his hand in there and pulls that shit up to block Dosu's attack. Shit was pretty weird. Lee's impressive things all come from his fight with Gaara, in my opinion. Gaara up to this point in the series is sort of like a mysterious powerhouse like Jiren in the Tournament of Power. I'm not saying that Gaara is as bland as Jiren. I just mean like in the way of Gaara is strong and you know it, but he hasn't really shown it yet. I mentioned earlier how Gaara had completed the Chunin exams in the fastest time ever and done it unscathed. He didn't get hit one time and he hadn't been hit in any of his missions prior to that, except when Rock Lee takes off his weights. He hits Gaara on his head, and he's the first person in the series to actually wound Gaara. None of the assassination attempts on Gaara's life from his father, none of the opponents he had forced to death or anything, nobody could hit him except Rock Lee. Lee, from this point, after realizing Gaara's sand was too much of a solid defense, realized his speed was irrelevant to the fight and that he could hit Gaara as much as he needed to, but he needed to do more damage, so he decided to bring out the primary lotus, or forward lotus, or front lotus, depending on whatever fucking translation you use. After running around Gaara super fast, Gaara in an almost calm manner just tells Lee to bring it on and attack him. Lee hits Gaara into the air, but the pain from opening the gates causes him to wince, giving Gaara the opportunity to leave his sand shell and make Lee finish the lotus on the shell, leaving Gaara with no damage. Then the last thing Lee can do is the reverse lotus, and I'll just play the clip. We see what he did to Gaara in that, and Gaara in the end still ended up getting up and crushing Lee's leg and arm to the point where the medics didn't think Lee could ever be a shinobi again, and without Tsunade he wouldn't have been. Aside from that, however, we do have guys saying that the reverse lotus would actually be the key to taking down Neji, and this does change depending on what translation you use. In the Viz, Guy says that this is the key to Lee winning the match, but in the original manga, the kanji there is for Neji's name, so that would mean that Lee, in possibly just his 3rd gate while weighted, would be fast enough and strong enough to beat Neji. And a lot of people like to bring up Rock Lee's statement that Neji's the strongest junior member of my team, but strongest can mean a lot of things, and in context it's probably referring to Neji's use of the gentle fist, because Lee considers that taijutsu better than his own. Not to say Neji couldn't beat a lot of other genin, just like that statement wouldn't apply to all forms of Lee. A lot of people like to say since Lee was reserving the reverse lotus for Neji, he needs the full weightless 5th gate power to do it, but the statement isn't indicative of that at all. It just means Lee was going to use at least the 3rd gate on Neji and beat him up with it. But regardless of how you interpret the statement, it ends in Lee over Neji, so the conclusion would be Lee would be in the number 3 spot. Spot number 2 goes to the most edgy kid I've mentioned thus far, Sasuke. Specifically Sasuke after his training with Kakashi. The first thing I'll start with is, for this section, is just getting rid of some Sasuke downplay. We'll start with the people saying Sasuke would lose to Neji in the Chunin exam, and this is actually just horrible, so I'll present the arguments to you one by one and tell you why they don't function. The first argument is that Gaara scales the Chidori Sasuke and Naruto intercepts Gaara on his way to Sasuke and kicks him backwards. This argument doesn't function for a number of reasons. The first being, let's just say you were to be skeptical or be a skeptic towards the argument and say, well, how fast is Sasuke midair with his Chidori? There is no answer. The only thing he does is hit Gaara. So you can't really scale that anywhere. But let's say we grant that first part of the feat and you're like, well, where was Naruto in relation to Gaara for you to claim that he's faster in order for the argument to function? There is no answer. The first time we see Naruto, he's already kicked Gaara. See what I mean? This argument is just, it looks okay at face value, but then when you look at it a little bit deeper and ask some questions about it, the argument's just not really there. There's also the statement of Gaara saying, bring out the power like when you took down Hyuga, I'll crush that power into nothingness. This can easily be interpreted as Gaara wanting him to bring out the Kyuubi chakra since he knows it makes him stronger. Not necessarily saying he needs to be exactly as strong as he was when he fought Neji. He could be stronger than that, weaker than that, we don't know. So I wouldn't use this to say Neji would scale to this form of Gaara or above Sasuke either. Oh, and at this point Naruto is protecting his friends, which we know can amp you, so we just don't know. Anyway, now that the Neji over Sasuke stuff has been dealt with for the most part, we can get into what Sasuke actually did and what earns him his spot at number 2. Data book 1 actually states that Sasuke during the Chunin exams, specifically the third part of the Chunin exams, is Gaara's strongest opponent thus far, which would put him over 5th Gate Rock Lee. Now, the immediate counter to this that I see most people bring up is that it is quote unquote contradicted by feats. Lee does better in his fight with Gaara than Sasuke does in his fight with Gaara, so the conclusion must be that Lee is stronger than Sasuke and the data book is just wrong. Well, no, that's not necessarily true. For one, Gaara gets stronger in between the 2 points of the fight. Gaara gets stronger through just killing people and or bloodshed. This is stated in data book 1 as well as an alternate translation of the manga, which would make it consistent for Sasuke to seemingly perform worse feats against Gaara, but to still be stronger than Lee, which makes it consistent for Sasuke to perform seemingly worse feats against Gaara but still be stronger than Lee. But I'll get into why I don't even think Lee has better feats than Sasuke in the first place. The first being, Sasuke only hit Gaara a total of 4 times. He kicked him a few times and he kneed him in his chest, and he had Gaara on his hands and knees, huffing and puffing and wanting to turn into a Biju, literally. Lee barraged Gaara multiple times, knocked him to the floor. Gaara still got up, crushed Lee's arms and legs, and crippled him. So I don't even think necessarily that Lee did any better than Sasuke. It was just that he had a better power display. It looked cooler, if you will. This sort of Sasuke over Rock Lee narrative isn't even foreign to Naruto. After Lee sees Sasuke copy his taijutsu on the sound ninja that Sasuke fights in the preliminaries of the Chunin exams, Lee even says that he's beginning to feel a little bit afraid of Sasuke. And when Sasuke's fighting Gaara and kicking him around the whole time, you can see Guy like comparing him to Lee, and Lee getting jealous that Sasuke could do all this after only 1 month of training when Lee had to train for years to obtain his level of speed. There's also a statement from Lee where he says that he felt himself powerless against Gaara, even including the 5th gate, and here Sasuke is just kicking the same guy, a stronger version of Gaara, around like it's nothing. So I understand that Rock Lee has these very cool moves. He's like a fan favorite. It's just Sasuke just seems to be portrayed as a much stronger character at this point in the series. Like, think of it this way, honestly, right? Do you think that if Sasuke and Lee fought in the finals of the Chunin exams, right, and Lee brung out the 5th gate after Sasuke just went on this training arc with Kakashi, that Kishimoto would write it in a way that one of his main characters would just lose to Rock Lee? I'm not gonna say Rock Lee is like a random or anything. He's still like a pretty important character to the Chunin exam. Do you really think Kishimoto would write that Sasuke would just lose to Lee in the finals of the Chunin exams? I don't think so. I just don't think that the narrative implies that whatsoever. There is also the statement where Guy says Sasuke is only about as fast as weightless Lee, which you could say that 5th gate Lee is faster than Sasuke off of that, but Sasuke's AP is just so much higher. He hits so much harder that Lee probably wouldn't even be able to hurt him. So yeah, Sasuke would just beat up Lee. He'd beat up Neji, he'd beat up Naruto. And if you take the anime as a valid source of information, or you think the anime is canon, there is a statement from the Anime Profiles Volume 2 book that Sasuke and Gaara are the best of the leaf and the best of the sand, which would obviously put Sasuke over 5th gate Rock Lee, Neji, and Naruto, like I've been saying, which I feel justifies Sasuke with his number 2 spot. Number 1 spot then obviously would go to Gaara, and for obvious reasons. So yeah, this is also where Naruto would go if you wanted to include Naruto with Gamabunta, but I didn't include him in this video, though like I said, you're more than welcome to place Naruto there. But that's it, that's the list, that's the top 5 in the Chunin exams. If you feel like I didn't extrapolate on a character as well as I could have, or you want to see me extrapolate on them more, just leave a comment. I'll probably get a video out about them if it's interesting enough. I also recently started a Discord server, so if you want to join and ask me some questions every now and then, I'll be doing that kind of stuff. So you can just join. I'll leave it linked into the description. But other than that, like, subscribe. Have a nice day.